I started making this May deer hunting chore list and writing them on the board here, and it kind of like I almost ran out of room. There's so much to do in May, and I think, you know, April's a big month because you're gearing up for spring. But man, there's a lot to do in May and a lot to get done, and a lot of it's timing issues where you have to get this done in May because if you wait till June, it's too late. Where things you accomplish, even cutting bedding areas in the wintertime, for example, you could start that end of December, January, February, March. There's a lot you can do throughout that entire time period. So, which we did a little bit around New Year's, and then we did a lot. We cut 18 different areas this year. So we got a whole lot done and accomplished when it came to cutting, but we had a long period of time to do it. But some of these other things, we have to do them now. Tree planting. Dylan brought some trees that we were putting in the ground. I think it was 250 Norway spruce. We're putting those in the ground for screening and for pockets where we want to change and diversify the cover out in open areas. And so those have to be put in right now. It's the 24th today. So we need to get those in by the 25th, 26th, Dylan, at the latest, probably.
I can get them in.
Yeah.
Shout out to Scott from Yellow River Nursery.
Yellow River. Yeah, that's where we got ours. Jen's dad, Greg, got his there. Dylan's been getting them there for years and pushing people to go there. And now look at Dylan. We'll want them next year and they'll be
They're
out.
They're going to be sold out. Yeah, that's we should keep this
so Scott,
secret. Yeah.
Scott, if you're watching, can you just save some for us a little bit? You know, like to give,
hundy spruce.
Especially Dylan. Dylan's the one that found this, so give him some love. You know, let him make sure he gets his order in before you're totally dry. But anyways, you know, we can't wait to get those in the ground. But that's a timing issue. We got to get those in now. This isn't something we can wait till next month.
Tell people that cheat code too. The drill and the auger.
Oh, Dylan, you tell him because Dylan just went through this.
Well, I felt really dumb because I did it all by hand on Friday with a shovel, got a little over 200 in that way, and literally my wrist, I must have pulled something, and I couldn't even hardly move my wrist. And I got a couple messages from previous clients who I've recommended plant trees, and they're like, bro, what are you doing? Like, do this. And they take a hammer drill, and then they get a planting or an earth auger, 24 inches long and 3 inches around. There's bigger ones you can get too, but I mean, makes your life way easier.
Yeah, a few seconds a hole.
Yeah, so if you're doing a couple hundred trees, definitely worth investing in one of those or borrowing from.
Well, it's cool, like you were talking about with an auger too. You're bringing that auger out of the ground and it's bringing all that soil and putting it neatly around the outside edge. So then when you put the tree in, then you have all the soil you can kick back into the hole and tamp it down real well with your foot. And so we are doing that. Jen's picking up a drill. So just today so we can do that. But anyways, big timing issues. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a lot going on with this food plot and many more. I can't wait to plant this. Check out what we're planting on WHS Wildlife Blends. All 12 of our blends are out. You can order bulk seed, buckwheat, and rye. Check it out. We have a new website. Click on seed on the whitetailhabitatsolutions.com. It'll take you right to the new blend site. Appreciate you for checking it out and taking the time to watch us. And that's why water holes, I put in water holes in July and August, even September, because that's just the timing we had to put it in. My goal, especially the later you get, I want green growing around that. We have our green max traffic blend, which is non-deer forage. People say, oh, there's ryegrass, and you talked about planting ryegrass. So I plant ryegrass in my yard. It's yard grass. And we want shade-resistant grass. So we have that in our mix. It's for traffic, people traffic, deer traffic, not for forage. So I want that around water holes because you want to hold the soil. But a lot of those grasses, and there's a little clover in there, a little bird's foot trefoil, a little bit of vetch, and you want that grass to hold the soil. You want to take place quickly, but if any of you ever plant grass seed in your yard, it takes a long time to come in. It takes quite a bit of time, so you need to start it early. So I like using a cover crop of oats, 50 pounds of oats per acre with that. But that's what I'm putting around the water holes. I want to do that, especially when you get in towards fall. I want that green crop going in really well. There's water holes right now in May that we create. We could throw our green max traffic blend in, that type of blend, throw it around that water hole and just let it go. We're not going to be in there. We're not going to be messing up that area. It's not a road system. So we have several months for that to come in. It'll be green and lush by the time we get into the season, and it'll look natural then. It'll blend in. That's kind of why you're doing that too. Whereas if you're waiting until August, you need to get something September growing on it green right away. so it doesn't stick out as a big dirt patch. Because then what I find is, yeah, does, fawns get used to it. This mature buck comes in from another area, he sees this big dirt patch. That's not natural to them. It really isn't. Doesn't matter if it's blinds, trail cameras, they don't get used to it. Big dirt patch, they don't get used to it. Big giant log piles, they don't get used to it. You're gonna hurt your potential for shooting certain mature bucks because you have those things in place, including that big dirt patch. So I like May because now I'm getting a chance where I don't need to immediately fill it like I would in September. I could wait and see what kind of rain we get in May, what kind of rain we get in June, July. Heck, you might get several inches of rain and all of a sudden that thing's full over a month and a half period of time, or half full, and I don't need to put much water in it when it comes time to it. Plus, I'm getting the deer used to that water hole in the location, and so that's why I really like May. It's that time where you can count on there not being frozen ground and snow. We can get in there with equipment or a shovel and get that thing installed. So that's why I've always talked about May being water hole month for a long time. Great time to get your water holes in. For those of you that are wondering about water holes, I want to give a little bit of information with each one of these. I really like the 300-gallon tanks. It's a lot more use of resources, whether time or money, to get that dug in. I like putting them flat to the ground. Like putting them in an open spot. You don't want deer to feel like they have to put their head in a hole, meaning logs all around, brush all around, shrubs all around, where they have to really take their eyes out of the equation when they're getting a drink. You don't want that. You want it to be flat, open, big area, back in the shade somewhere, and always near a bow hunting stand. If you don't have it near a bow hunting stand, it's a real sin in my book, because that's great. You attract bucks and deer there, but if you can't shoot them, that's not a good thing. You're pulling them away from stand locations that you can. So that's another reason I like getting these in early, because they're near stand locations. I want deer to get used to it. Bottom line is below the ground a little bit or flush with the surface. 300 gallons are great because why 300 gallons? Because we've used 150, 100s, half 55-gallon drums at 27.5-gallon tanks. What we found is that in drought conditions during the season with heavy use, you'll go through about 100 gallons in a tank like that every 3 to 4 weeks. So imagine a 27.5-gallon tank. I mean, that's gone in a week or less sometimes, let alone 150. 2/3 of that's gone in 4 weeks, a month and a half, it's gone if you have drought, which we've had the last 2 years. We'll go some seasons where we don't fill them for 2 years. And then we'll go 2 seasons in a row where we fill them 2 or 3 times because they're going out that fast. Where 300 gallons, that's the size where you start to approach where it lasts the entire season. So that's why I like them. Because as we talk about with water holes all the time, if they run out and the deer have been hitting them, those deer aren't coming back for 2 or 3 weeks, even if you put water in immediately. Once they run out, they go to it a few times, realize there's not water there, they don't come back. And that's the beauty of a man-made water hole. I like tanks the best because then there's no mud and cracking mud for the EHD midge to propagate and actually infect deer. It's either water or green grass, lush vegetation growing around it. There's none of that dry, cracking, receding mud like a normal pond in the woods that helps spread EHD. Not saying they're EHD proof, but there's no mud for the midge to live in. So why would there be EHD? Why would there be a concern of EHD in a case like that? Number 2, last spray, first spray. What I mean by that is if you're applying simazine in the spring for switchgrass before spring green up, then you're getting another spraying the end of April of 2,4-D and Roundup. Mid-April, end of April, early April, depending on the timing in your area when those weeds are 8-10 inches high, growing aggressively. That'll be this weekend for me, towards the end of April. Then, towards that end of May, 4 weeks later, I'm getting that second spraying of 2,4-D and glyphosate, which is my third spraying all together. And then I'm throwing seed down sometime around the 1st of June, as in the case this year, and letting it go on weed-free soil. I wait about 7 days after I apply that 2,4-D and Roundup so the 2,4-D doesn't potentially injure our high soft count quality seed that's coming in. If you have a high hard count, I've seen hard count seed blends over 70% switchgrass. That's not good because that means 70% of that switchgrass won't be growing until next year. That's not a good thing. Soft seed means it's available for germination right away. It'll germinate 7 to 10 days at the most in good, warm, wet conditions. So anyways, I'm completely eliminating the weeds and I'm throwing my switchgrass down by the end of May, early June. And then for food plots, sometime in May, it doesn't matter if it's early May, which will be my case right around early May, or the end of April, middle of May. That's that first spraying on my food plots if I'm looking to kill. Especially if I'm looking to kill new areas that are just weeds right now, that have never been worked on, old pasture land, whatever it might be. I'm spraying that 2,4-D Glymix, and then I'm not doing another spraying or complete another spray until June and sometime, and then sometime the end of July, depending on the conditions and what's going on with that. If it's a brand new plot, I might spray 3 times. If it's an older plot, I might spray twice. But bottom line is that first opportunity is in May. You don't want to let those weeds grow to 2 feet high, 3 feet high, because that's all fresh matter, organic matter that takes a long time to break down, and it prohibits seed from getting onto the soil later on in the year unless you're using really deep tillage equipment. Around here we have too many hills. I don't want to use deep tillage. The farmers in the area already do, and all their soil erodes onto our property on those edges. In a lot of areas we had corn growing in multiple places last year on our land. That's not a good thing. Big trenches coming out of the fields. I don't want to do that. So that's why you have that balance. Well, if you till all the time, you get a lot of erosion in these hilly areas. Even organic farms. I had a farm in Michigan that I worked on last month, and they pulled their organic tag from that farm, or organic certified label. The county did, because there were hills in that area and there was too much erosion for deep tillage over and over again with an organic farm and typical practices. So they pulled the certification to avoid erosion in the area. So that speaks volumes. And so there's always this balance. Some people like chemicals. I don't like all my topsoil eroding away. So there's a balance. You try to limit both, when you can. The bottom line is May is a big time for this right here. Switchgrass planting and pollinator. This is a time, again, end of May. If you're you're outside that 7-day window of your last spraying, great time to apply pollinator and switchgrass on the ground. Now pollinator, I'll put in with 50 pounds of oats per acre. When those oats get 12, 15 inches high in the future, I'll mow them out, and you're just left with whatever is growing in that pollinator. The pollinator is nursed along by that oat crop. So that's why I like mixing with that and putting that out. The bottom line is perfect time to plant that switchgrass. It might end up early June, end of May, depending on the timing of that last spring. But that's what you've worked on the ground so far. Clover. Why not frost seed? Because most of the time people haven't taken control of their weeds. And the clover's not going to outcompete your weeds. You can mow, limit your weeds, but there's always going to be weeds in there unless you chemically control, get rid of the weeds. Then you can mow, and then in the future, if you get weeds, you can use 1 quart per acre of glyphosate before a good rainy period. It will not kill your clover. People will say it's going to kill your clover, it's going to kill your clover. Folks, glyphosate is the weakest herbicide that you can use. That means it's weak because it doesn't kill stuff. Clover is one of those that is very resistant to glyphosate, and so is a lot of other weed. Pigweed, water hemp, smartweed. Those are all weeds that compete greatly with glyphosate. It's almost like they drink it up. And clover is one of those too, where you can spray it on clover, it just comes right back. I wouldn't suggest spraying the normal 2 quarts per acre, but 1 quart is certainly appropriate. But when clover, I want to maintain the weeds, get it down to those weeds. Then who cares if I'm throwing my clover seed down in the ground end of May with a cover crop of oats, just like the pollinator blend. So we have our pollinator blend, we have our clover blend. Those are great for doing this. Same with our Green Max traffic blend. This time of year, I want to take care of weeds on the trails or water holes, areas that I want to plant it, and I'm going to use that 50 pounds per acre of oats as a cover crop on all 3 of those. Green Max traffic blend, clover, or the pollinator blend. But I want to control weeds first. Very, very critical. And then you'll be rewarded for that. And then the cover crops helps withstand that summer drought. If you don't use a cover crop, like the farmers around here do with their alfalfa and hay, you could be in really big trouble, because that's a time, has been 20 years, but I had a big clover crop fail that was very expensive for me to put in, a couple acres. It looked great in May, early June, and then 1 inch of rain for 9 weeks and it all fizzled out and died. And that's what can happen. So my favorite time to establish clover is actually with your cool season annual in August, whether that's brassicas early, end of July, early August, mid-August, or cereal grains later in September. But bottom line is you're putting that clover in as a base. Cool season annual is what attracts deer that year in the fall for hunting. And then after that, you're getting rid of that cool season annual, like in the case of rye or wheat the following spring. The oats die, the brassica die over the wintertime, and you're left with pure clover. So that's my favorite time to put clover in, but it can be done if you use a cover crop in the spring. Clover is a great time. That's when I'm planting all my clover. Probably towards the end of May too. Trail cam buck bedding. Dylan doesn't know it, but what we're going to do is we're going to go out to a couple really cool buck bedding areas, especially recent ones where we've had timber cut, And we're going to make sure they're loaded up with batteries, and we're going to stick cameras in those locations so that we can watch when the bucks actually use it. And I'll tell you, those reveals that we use, they'll last for many months in those locations where you don't have to touch them, especially during the summer. I would say that we're putting those out right now, April 24th. The next time I touch those will be the end of September, right around in there, getting ready for the season, and then we'll let them go till April, March. So we'll really put batteries in them once over this next time period, get those going, but we'll be able to watch the bucks use these bedding areas where we expect them to use. It'll be very telling, because if it's thick enough and there's a lot of regeneration, we probably won't see much buck use in those areas, but we're also putting them on trails where deer can actually move through those areas where they're a little bit more open. So it'll be interesting to see when the bucks can actually come into those areas. I don't expect a lot during the summer, but it's really cool when a buck comes into that area and we see him for a day or two in the summer, even if we don't see him for 2 more months, we know we have him locked in for the deer season. We know he's going to be back. He's familiar with that area. He will be back. And so that's why I want to put these in there now. It'll give us a lot of intel going in the future of what bucks will be in what area, especially with all the cutting we have going on, to make sure that we're locking on certain bucks in certain areas long before we see them or even see them on a nearby stand location. Because a lot of these bedding areas, we have stand locations nearby, whether it's 200 yards, 100 yards, there's somewhere nearby. In the case of one of them we're going to, we call it Redneck Corner. We have a stand location on one side about 100 yards and the other side about 150. One's a water hole, one's a top of a ditch crossing. So we're going to watch both those, and whatever buck we see in that bedding area, we know it's going to be one of those 2 stand locations, whether we have a camera there or not. So really good time to start that intel. Some of these bucks that we know, we'll be able to recognize them within 6 weeks from now. So we're getting those cameras out. They just want to get a glimpse of them, to know they made it the rest of the winter. A lot of these we know they made it already. But we want to have them back in these secure spots we normally don't go to. And again, I might go to some of these spots just one more time before the season. Plot expansion, roads, trails. May is my favorite time because road restrictions are off. There's enough green in the woods. Mud is out of the picture for the most part. A lot of our trails you can get around without wrecking the land, and dry enough to do so. And great time to start expanding our plots and roads that we want to put in, or cleaning up roads, and I can't wait to do so. That's a really fun time. I know Brandon from First Choice Food Plots, for clients, there's a lot of areas he works on all over the place. And then Jared, we have a local excavator operator, heavy equipment operator. He works for us a lot of times too, especially on these hills around here. He's very familiar with putting in steep roads. He put one in for us last year that's a doozy. So we're going to have him out to do some more work this year. He's been a great resource as well. So bottom line, we get really excited this time to have some of that done, and then it gives us that time that we need to plant our green blends on and hold the soil, put seed down for human traffic, foot traffic, vehicle traffic areas, lots of deer traffic, that kind of thing, like around our water holes, areas where we can let this grow all summer long and not get washed out in the fall, and certainly not spread EHD because we're getting it full of green around some of those water holes. So great time to do so. We're certainly doing that. And then when it comes down here, this last part, and I'll say, our diversity pockets for big rock trees, they're probably going to go in the 1st of May, right around there. I think first week of May is what they had told me with Tom and Seth. So it should be around that time. And then our trees, we're putting those in here right away. It's going to be the end of April, but for a lot of you, you're getting your tree plantings end of April. We put them in May. But bottom line is there's time limits on those. They have to go in right now. And then when it comes down to it, the fun stuff. Turkey, we have multiple tags in May for birds in Wisconsin. I think we'll be hunting this week for turkeys in Minnesota. Might be hunting when we get back from a client trip in mid-May here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So a lot of turkey hunting. Now, I'll be turkey hunting in April a little bit. I can't wait. It's going to be this week, maybe even this afternoon. But certainly on Tuesday or Wednesday. Wednesday is the first day of the season, right, in Minnesota? I mean, as far as this season, the next one. But bottom line is we'll be hunting a little bit this week, but man, May is turkey time. May is also walleye time. So we're fitting a lot in May. That's our first trip where we go to Canada for about a week and really hit the walleye hard. Can't wait for that. That's always a fun time. And I can't wait to get up there. We're going to do that. And then, of course, shooting the bows outside. What a perfect time in May to really start blasting some arrows downrange. Heck, we had 2 days ago, we had 1.5 inches of snow on the ground here. When we left for a vacation we went on a week ago, we literally left a week ago, and we had about 8 to 10 inches of snow right before that, 6 inches, whatever it was. It took all last week for that to melt. So now we're really getting to that time where things are going. I think winter's over with the snow. We'll see, but it's a great time to get out and shoot your bow. So a lot going on in May. I hope you have a lot going on too, because bottom line, this stuff's all fun. So we're doing a little bit with deer hunting, a little bit with deer habitat, food plots, just the whole gamut of things, expanding roads, food plots. We can't wait to get May over with in some ways, because that means we got a lot of work accomplished. Boy, it's so rewarding and enjoyable going through it. I know Dylan's sore from putting that stuff in, cracked his wrist or whatever it does, but highly worth it though, right?
Felt good, man. Yeah, I'm excited to see the way they take off in the next couple years. Yeah,
and the thing is, you're not planting trees again in May, June, July, August, September. Yeah. This is the timing. Again, a lot of these are timing issues, especially when it comes to chemicals, planting trees, shrubs, and I hope you're being mindful of that timing opportunity and getting a lot done in May and a lot accomplished, because it'll really pay off this deer season and beyond. Now, I don't know if you've checked out our main website lately, whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, but we've really had a lot going on, including hats, books, our web class, and certainly our new seed company, WHS Wildlife Blends. When you click on seed on our site, it'll take you right to our brand new site for the seed company. We have all 12 blends available. So check it all out though. I encourage you, I appreciate you checking it out. Whether you buy anything or not, really appreciate you visiting the site and seeing what's going on, and continue to watch, because we have big things coming later this year.